Good afternoon slash evening, everyone. My name is Tony Delaney, and I'm the Clinical Case Manager for the Office of Student Support. On to this evening's Student Support Zoom Initiative video, we have Assistant Dean Ron Castanzo, and he's going to give us some information on the grading policy with the credit, no credit for spring 2020. And to my left, I think it's on the Zoom, on my left of the Zoom screen, we have the Associate Director of Student Support, Pavan.
Yeah, so like Tony said, my name is Pavan Perswani, Associate Director for Student Support. If you've been watching these videos, you've seen enough of me. So I'm going to just turn it over to Ron, the Associate Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, just to make sure we get that in there correct.
It's all right. It's all right.
My apologies.
It's all right. Yeah, I know I'm aware of the fact there's been a lot of anxiety about the grading policy, the emergency grading policy that'll be in place for this spring, and certainly the motivation for the grading policy is that we understood that students not only were experiencing a lot of disruption in their classes, a lot of students that were in face-to-face classes were now thrown into online classes that they didn't choose to take, but also people have a lot going on at home as well. I have kids here, right now, and my oldest is in goes College Park. He's home. Obviously, he's not there. So and so it's a lot going on at home, which makes it harder to focus even on work at home and schoolwork, at home, because so much seems to be going on. It's a lot of distractions. But the idea was to give students an option to take courses for credit or not for credit. So students will receive a grade, a letter grade, their regular grade, as they always would get it at the end of the semester. However, they will have an option to take the course for credit or not for credit. Now, how that will appear is in the student portal. There's a form. There'll be a link to a form, and it's a short little form. It's really more like a table, really, and it'll have a few columns in it, and you'll see your letter grade and your course. And then on the right-hand side, there'll be a column for you to pick an option if you want to. If you don't like your letter grade, you can choose credit. There'll be an option for credit with a D, CRD, and there'll be an option for not for credit. And you'll be able to choose one of those three if you're not happy with your letter grade. Now, I think students need to think about this carefully, how this will work. Will a grade hurt your GPA? For example, think about that. Now, couple things to keep in mind, and this is important as well. Credit includes C-. So C- grades, you will also have the credit option for a C- grade. C- normally cannot be used to fulfill major requirements. Also, certain gen ed requirements, namely writing 300 and IDAS 302. Okay, those two requirements you need a C in normally, but the C- will work for those classes. You can check off the credit option. So now the C- grade will count towards the major requirement or the gen ed requirement. A D grade will not, but you can choose the credit with a D option, or D with the credit option. That means that you're getting a D in the course, so that means it won't count towards a major requirement. It won't count as a prereq for a course. It won't be a sufficient grade. You would need to retake the course, but it won't count against your GPA. And that's a really important distinction. F, obviously, you have an F, but you can choose the not for credit. So it's not really going to count for anything if you receive an F, but it won't count against your GPA either. So that's important. But I think one thing that, and I'm talking with the registrar about this, I want to make students aware of this. I think it could be a point where students could be confused. If you get a D, it's important that students understand that they really should choose the credit with D option. I have no idea why anyone would keep a D. There'd be no reason to keep a D grade for anything. But I think students might not understand that there's no reason for them to keep the D at all. D is going to count as a D, but it's going to count against your GPA. Just choose the credit with a D option, and I'm not sure that's going to be clear to students. So I think we need to do a little better job of explaining that. I don't know. It just seems to be an area where a student might be confused. But students are certainly free to talk to their academic advisor about this after they get their grades. I don't have a URL to show, but we do that. The CAS advising page has advisors listed. I hope students generally know who their advisor is at this point, and they know how to contact them. They're dealing with a lot of students by Zoom now, so we're pretty well, um, have adapted to the change here. But they don't email them by Zoom. But certainly feel free to contact their advisor if they have any questions about the grading policy. You'll have till June 1st to make your decision about, that's not a ton of time because you're probably, when grades are due, it's a week and a half probably. It's not a ton of time really in the end, but you'll have till that time to make your decision about what you want to do with your grades. Graduate students, it's slightly different with graduate students. There's not going to be a credit with D option, but D isn't an option, for a grad student anyway. So you're not going to see that option there, but you'll still have the credit, not for credit option. There are only a couple of exceptions to that. Graduate programs were given the option to opt out of this for certain courses for the credit, non-credit option. As far as I know, there are just a couple of courses, and they're both in one CAS program, integrated design. That you will not have a credit, not for credit option. You have to, whatever letter grade is given, you have to keep. I think across the university, those are the only exceptions as far as I know, that one program for courses. But again, you'll have till June 1st, and you can switch back and forth. In other words, your decision isn't final. It's not when it's May 27th, and you say, well, I'm going to keep this grade. I'm not going to check off credit. You will still have till June 1st to switch that back. So you can change your mind up until June 1st. It's not final when you do that. It won't be final. Now, academic progress is important too, and a lot of students are worried about that. Students, if you're an undergraduate student, no students are going to be suspended or dismissed after this semester. That will not happen, no matter what your grades are. If you choose to keep your grades, choose to keep all your grades, doesn't matter. Okay, normally how it works is a student is on probation. Student on probation has 12 credits. An undergraduate student has 12 credits to raise their GPA to a 2.0, overall GPA to a 2.0. That's basically a student who's on probation last semester. If they don't get their GPA to 2.0, they get a reset of 12 credits, essentially is how it's going to work. They get a 12 credit reset. So that will begin again for them. Graduate students, going to work the same way. In theory, there is the option though. There's a little more latitude for programs to suspend, graduate programs to suspend or dismiss students. So it's not absolute. With graduate programs, there are undergraduates, there is no option. Students get the 12 credit reset. Grad programs, the feeling is that generally in the administration, I think amongst faculty and program directors across the board, is that we really don't want to be suspending or dismissing students after this semester. Although we had a discussion about this, and we thought that in some instances, based on student performances, what they did last semester, how they performed this semester, it might be in their best interest if they don't continue in the program, and they're going to have a conversation with that student and try to explain that to them, that, hey, this might not be in your best interest. It doesn't look like it's going to work out for you, so maybe it's best, if you don't come back. So the graduate programs have a little latitude in that regard on suspensions and dismissals, depending on the specific situation and how that student is doing. But I think generally you're not going to see a lot of that. The feeling is we don't want to be doing much of that this semester. That's the general feeling. I think that's it with the grading policy. Is there anything else you could think of that students might be wondering about with the grading policy?
Well, so 2 points real quick. One, I'll drop, I know you mentioned the academic advisor's information. I'll drop that link in the YouTube description below so people can click on it to make it faster to get there. But the other thing that I think is important to make sure we mention is also in the event that you are receiving a scholarship or your education is being funded by your employer, make sure that you're checking in about what is the expectations that they're going to be having about grades, because sometimes they can have very specific criteria. And so in that case, you want to make sure that you're fully aware when you're making the decision about no credit or those things, so that you're making sure that you're not putting your educational funding in harm's way or anything like that. So check in with financial aid or your employer, whatever the specific body is who's providing that financial support, to make sure that you're complying with what they need as well.
And
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
and
sure.
I
Go
would
ahead there, Tony.
definitely add on to that point, just for any students that are attending UB under a J1 or a F1 visa, definitely check in with the international office, just also see if making this transition could impact your sponsorship. There's a lot of whole host of different rules and regulations on that, depending on who's sponsoring you or what program you're here under. And so just check and clear with them to make sure that that's okay and you're not adversely affected by making that decision.
Yes, there are definitely some countries that, I mean, I don't know in this circumstance what they're going to do. So they may be making exceptions with all that's going on, but may not accept that for credit. You know,
Mhm.
so that's something a student have to check with. I think it's important also for students applying to grad school.
Mhm.
Now, there's not a good sense of how that's going to play out, whether grad schools are going to make exceptions, because I think this is happening in a lot of institutions across the country. So they may be making exceptions in this regard. But students will, after the fact, they will be able to go and get the letter grade and find out what the letter grade is. It doesn't disappear forever. If I get the B minus in my undergraduate class and something like that, and it's going to hurt my GPA, I choose credit because I think that might bring down my GPA, that B minus. I take that course for credit. That B minus doesn't just disappear, gone forever. No one will be able to get to that again. It does still exist. And if you need to find it out for some reason or some institution, program somewhere else, no, we want to know what the grade is in the stats class that you took, because it went all the way down to C minus. We don't like C minus grades in this course, and you can go back and get it, and that's important as well. It doesn't disappear forever. But yeah, I think those issues about funding for courses are important ones as well. Anything else that you've heard from students that there are questions about this, about the policy or how it's going to work out?
I mean, I think you hit on the
Yeah.
finer points of it. I think the other thing that you stressed was the difference between the undergraduate experience and the graduate experience, which I think is really crucial. And for those folks who have done graduate work, they kind of understand the different expectations there as it relates to some of the grading anyways.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's too important to note is this conversation is very much centered on undergrad, grad. The law school is doing something equivalent, but it is labeled a little bit differently. So definitely, if you're looking for information about that, make sure you're reaching out to the dean's office over in the UB School of Law.
Yeah, importantly, yeah, I'm not really up on all that the law school is doing, so yeah.
So I guess one question I would have for you, and it might be changing subjects a little bit, but
Yeah.
it is what are some resources that you want to ensure that students are aware of?
I mentioned I think a really important resource is their advisor. I want to reiterate that. And I know Pavan says they can put up that link for students. I have a feeling that in the second half of May, there'll be a lot of students with questions about the grades, for example, grading policy and what should they do. And I think advisor is a really good person for you to talk to. They know the policy and they also know all your grades and what's important for you. That's an important resource. And I supervise advising in CAS, so that's one of my main jobs. Also, I think I can't remember exactly what it is on the OTS webpage, what it's called for students. It's what's it called?
The MyUB portal.
Working, teaching, and learning remotely.
Oh, yes.
And that's an important web page for students to go to. They're in the process of trying to get more resources for students. They have loaned out a lot of what they had or most of what they had, but they're continually trying to get more resources, laptops for students to loan for students, video cameras. So I think it's important to go there for your needs. I know some students they had used by I think it was March 24th, what they had, and students were nervous about that, but I think they found other resources and they've kind of restocked, I think, to a certain extent. Either way, whatever the website says, if it says they don't have resources right now, fill out that form and submit it. It's really important to do that. If more resources become available, then you might be first in line, to get if more resources become available. So it's really important to still fill out that form, even if it says right now they don't have any more. Okay.
Absolutely, and I'll make sure that that link gets there as well. They have a team dynamics form that you fill out.
Right.
And just for anybody who, if you don't know this at this point, if you don't know who your academic advisor is, if you log into your MyUB portal, you can find that right in there. It lists your academic advisor, and we'll have the links for how to communicate with all of them in the descriptions below. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to a question that's more about you. So what has been your favorite quarantine guilty pleasure as we're now in week 6, which is crazy to say out loud?
Yeah. I don't know if I'd call it a guilty pleasure, but there is a lot of leftover Easter chocolate. And that my kids have, and I've really just been wolfing on that, way too much, but it's around and I keep sneaking it. And I've actually been prohibited from using it so much, from taking a lot of it during the day, but I'm still kind of sneaking it, so don't tell anybody that. I still go out there to the kitchen and put my hand in there and take some and quickly walk back to right here, So I'd have to put down the chocolate as probably my main deviation from normal routines. Maybe I'm having a little more wine than usual. Sorry, maybe I shouldn't have mentioned that.
It's all good. You're drinking responsibly.
So, I mean, and kind of talking about working at home.
Yeah.
As you have transitioned, I know you mentioned, some of the challenges when we first opened today's video, but what have been some of the challenges that you have been experiencing, and maybe some of the solutions for working remotely?
I think probably the biggest challenge is keeping connected with people. In the past, generally, I mean, we have meetings, if there's Zoom meetings, a lot of times I call in, I'm just there audio, and a lot of people do that as well. They're just there for audio and they listen in the meeting. And that's fine. I really never had an issue with that. It's like, fine, I can just be there and listen and I can talk. I've found that since the shutdown, I really enjoy being on video. Enjoy is probably not the word I want to use, but I find that it's very useful being on video and seeing other people on video. It does help you feel a little more like you're connected there with people than if you were just listening to people's voices. Because when you really don't see people at all, you're not seeing anyone in person, it does make you feel a little more connected to them and a little more like you're having a conversation, than it would if you were just by voice. So I even encourage people to do that as well. We have, for example, bi-weekly advising staff meetings, so we're still doing those. And I said from the start, I said, listen, if you can be there by video, be there by video. I'd really much prefer that if you can do that rather than just calling in. Normally, I wouldn't really care. During regular semesters, like if you want to call in, that's fine. You can call in remotely, that's okay. But under these circumstances, I'm very much encouraging that. And I have drop-in meetings every week as well that I've established on Thursdays, where people can just kind of drop in if they want to talk to me about something. It's not an established meeting per se. But I think that's the biggest challenge. And a lot of things, there's certainly a lot of information too that you're used to walking down the hallway and asking somebody or telling somebody something, giving people some information. Now it's a little more challenging to get the information or, just easily, in a very informal way, it seems. We're doing it. We're emails and we have our periodic Zoom meetings. But that's a challenge, certainly. I would say those are the two main ones. But I will add something else too. Is I think I mentioned this just maybe 15 minutes ago or 20 minutes ago to you guys, and that is that the distractions. I was talking with Tony, the level of distractions at home. We're talking about students and how they have all kinds of distractions. Well, I've learned from me too. That it's very distracting working on. There's a lot going on. So that has been a challenge as well. And kids need things to do things and they're all home, so it does interrupt work at times.
Absolutely. If you can tell, that's why I've been kind of banished to my basement. So
you've been eating too much candy?
No, well, no, just because of the kids interrupting. But yes, I do have a bag of Sour Patch Kids upstairs with my name on it. That's for true. But then the other thing is, I think that you made a good point about, and something that Tony and I've experienced, is that we work in the same office, and so like we are very used to popping our heads into each other's offices, and so it's like now we're like, well, do we want to talk on Zoom? Do we want to talk on the cell phone? Like Facebook Live, and like at one point we accidentally Facebook videoed each other, and so then every time we were calling after that, we were accidentally hitting that, and we're like, I don't know that video is really required, but the button is popping up now. So
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can relate in a lot of ways. And so
yeah.
one of the things that we've tried to do in some of these conversations is also focus on some good news. And so
Mhm.
can you share maybe one piece of good news that you want to share right now? It can be about the university. It can be about your life, just anything going on that you think is a positive thing you want to share.
Um, well, let's say one thing with the university, this whole transition I can share, and then maybe one personal thing
Mm-hmm.
as well. I think what I was expecting with the transition to online learning, whenever that happened, was it mid-March now? I've kind of lost track of time to a certain extent. A lot of my time markers aren't there, so you kind of lose track of things. But what I was expecting with the transition, and just in terms of general issues, just logistics, how courses were going to come off, how faculty were going to be able to adapt to it, were they going to be able to do this, what is the level of dissatisfaction going to be, among students? Are they going to have a lot of issues with their instruction? You know,
Mm-hmm.
what I was expecting and what ended up happening was very different things, really. There are issues certainly, and there are a lot of students that are unhappy with this. They didn't sign up for online learning, many of our students. Now they find themselves thrown into it. That's understandable that they're not happy. We're doing the best we can with that. But just it wasn't near what I was expecting. And I was geared up, for that first couple of weeks, just for it to be an onslaught, with issues with courses, even just technological issues. I mean, all kinds of things. And it really didn't happen. And I find even that a lot of faculty who had very little experience teaching, if any, teaching online, are doing a fantastic job with it, and the students are enjoying the experience with those instructors. They've told me that personally, in meeting and drop-in meetings we've had, with students, that this particular instructor, they're loving the experience, and the instructor is really new to online. So that is a very positive thing that I can share, in spite of the problems. And I know there's a certain amount of dissatisfaction, and all that's understandable. It's not nearly the level that I thought, and that is very gratifying. On a on a personal note, I mean, I moved into a new house in the middle of all this, so this is
Oh,
like
wow.
just about 2 weeks on Monday. So that was interesting. So you talk about distractions while you're trying to get work done. So you have kids back at home, and you have your moving. So that was a lot of distraction, but that's a very positive thing, and happened in my life as well. So we're very excited about that, but it has presented its own challenges as well.
All very good things all around. So let me ask you this. Where do you find your inspiration for the work that you do, especially in a remote environment? Where are you finding your inspiration?
I have to say, honestly, it's a challenge for me. I mean, I get a lot of, as an instructor, it's been a couple semesters I've taught any classes, just as an example. I do get a lot of inspiration from really interacting with the students myself personally. Having them in front of me and getting feedback from them is something I really enjoy. So, and dealing with people too, the advisors, or with you guys, interacting with people in person is something that I enjoy a lot. So it is more challenging to me in a remote environment because you don't have that same connection. So, but what inspires me really is just the work we do, and student satisfaction means a lot to me. Whether it's satisfaction with their courses, with their instructors, generally with the institution. I do my best to try to help students if I can, even if it's just giving them information on where to go, the right place to go. I really try to do the best I can, and I want the students in the college, particularly Cass is where I work, to be as happy as they can be, and I get satisfaction from solving problems, both students and faculty. And a lot of my job is that. It's figuring out solutions to problems that people are having, and new ones come up every day, one thing or another. Issue a student is having, an issue an instructor is having. That's a lot of my hour-to-hour stuff. I get satisfaction in that.
That's awesome.
Excellent. So I think that's most of the questions that we had planned. The only other thing that I would throw out there is there anything that we haven't talked about that you really want the UB community or the students to hear right now, or just anything we haven't touched upon that you think that's important to touch upon? I know we've talked about a lot, so it's okay if there isn't.
No, there's no other information I want to share. I mean, I would reiterate that I've definitely been in touch with a number of students. It's difficult for them in this environment. You're definitely not alone. I mean, there are a lot of support on campus, particularly on my end. Your advisor is there. Student, I'm there as well. We're there to support you. And the dean of the college, Chris Spencer. So there's really is a lot of support out there if you're feeling just completely isolated. Say you were in a face-to-face class. Now it's totally asynchronous. And and you're not even seeing your instructor anymore, on any kind of regular basis or interacting with them directly, and you're feeling just really isolated out there. We've noticed that attendance has dropped off, in a lot of classes. I'm feeling this has something to do with it. Students just have lost that connection. So please reach out to me, reach out to your advisor, try reaching out to your instructor. If there are issues, I'm certainly going to try to solve them for you, and we'll try to get you back into a satisfying environment and situation for you. Just want to reiterate that.
Absolutely. We are all in this together, and I don't mean to reference High School Musical other than the fact that it's true. And so we're all experiencing this together. And if there's anything, I know Ron mentioned the academic advisors, the instructors, the different dean staff members, the Office of Student Support. Like, if there's anything that any of us can be doing to assist you, please reach out, because that is exactly why we're here. Tony, you have anything else for the good of the order?
No, that is good. So stay safe, stay happy, everybody.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.